Yes.
So it's gonna be a little awkward because apparently their remote doesn't work, so I'm gonna be right
Okay.
here, which is weird. Because the remote doesn't work and I can't get the projector to work at the same time without manually touching it, so. No, you're fine, honey, you're fine. I just wanna let you know that I'm gonna be wandering behind you. Okay. No, I wasn't trying to tell you you had to move. Alrighty, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Today's talk, come on in. Grab you a seat, here's your handout. If you scan that, it'll give you a download for resources that goes along with this and that you can use later, because that's always helpful. So, we are gonna talk about how to ask better questions so you are not always getting the I don't know, the blank stare, or sometimes the roll of the eyes, which is very common when some of our kiddos are stressed out. So, with that, these are some of the common problems. I teach, I do live classes as well, and I remember when I was in a classroom with 30 kiddos. So, problems that parents and teachers hear all the time. Why you're hearing that I don't know, it's usually not about the kiddo being lazy or not wanting to work. I mean, sometimes we've all been there, right? But this is about, a lot of times, maybe the question is just too broad, and the kiddo's like, I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to be answering. What am I supposed to be focusing on? And so this is why sometimes they kind of shut down. They might need scaffolding. Scaffolding is beautiful because it helps, and we're going to show you exactly what that actually means. Because scaffolding helps them understand the steps to get to the right answer, and it doesn't lower the skill at all. So, some of the key shifts that is really helpful when you start asking about, if we start like, what's the main idea? Well, if your kiddo's already stressed and doesn't enjoy reading, and the test questions freak them out a little, starting kind of hardcore like that can be challenging, especially if you have ADHD kiddos, because that can often lead to shutdown. So instead of starting like that, let's start thinking about this question to ask before we get there. Like, what did you notice? Why is that important? Let them like mimic out and think out loud, like a virtual brain dump, but that way they can express what they're thinking without being overwhelmed, and then you can guide them. So when I say scaffolding means breaking the question down into smaller pieces. So instead of what is the main idea, what is the topic? What are we talking about? Why does this even matter? Real conversation, not just we need to do this and you have to do it, we have to find the main idea. Breaking it down one question at a time is very helpful. And sentence stems are also a great way to go. On the end of this presentation, I've got a universal sentence stem thing, and in that download you'll have those as well, grade level by grade level. Question ladders, start simple. What did you notice? Where did you see that in the text? Why does that matter? What does it show? What does it mean? If your friend did that, or if I did that, what would it feel like? Sometimes connecting, especially with our ADHD kiddos, connecting that emotion to the story or the piece of whatever you're working on really helps them connect, not because they're just going to magically start loving to read, but they can at least understand where they're supposed to be going. So for 6th grade questions, in 6th grade, you're really building the foundation on how to ask. Their level from 5th grade to 6th grade changes quite a bit. So in 6th grade, they're going to be asked main idea, key details. Now they'd already been asked that, but we're really starting to get into more formalized questions and thinking. That's one of the great things about sixth grade is you're really setting up the foundation for them. So instead of the main idea, we're going to look for like, what is the passage mostly about? Why does the author spend so much time explaining it? Which detail seems the most important? Or why do you think the author included that at all? Those are great reasons. Think about if any of you have read The Hobbit. It's why does Tolkien start with the longest chapter of the book? Right there in Hobbiton. It's because he wants you to know exactly what type of people hobbits are, because that changes throughout the whole story. And so those are things that we can pick up on and start asking and getting them used to having those questions. Not just what's the main idea, but why does it even matter? Finding evidence. Text evidence is a big part where they're starting to find text evidence now and having to use it and explain it somewhat. So when we're doing that, we want to make sure that we're asking, where in the passage does it say that? And really essentially having them prove it to themselves or prove it to you. Why did you choose that sentence? Why did you choose that answer? Which one is the best? Not all of them might be okay and it might be related, but which one is the best that really answers that question or supports what the author's saying? For writing, we go through a claim, evidence, explanation. It's very simple. What is the claim? In sixth grade, this is your key short writing. What is the claim? Make one clear claim. What are we writing about? Explain, support the claim with one piece of evidence, and then explain the evidence. That's it. That gives them claim, evidence, and explanation, which is the key foundations for all writing moving forward. Even in an email, you say you need something, or a text message. I need this because of this, this, and this, and it's important because I have lunch. You know, very detailed, very structured. When you give them structure, it makes it easy. The more times you do it, the repetition makes it easier for them and for you. Move away from talking to writing. So, what do you think in one sentence? That way it reduces the overwhelm to write a whole lot when we're just building that foundation. What is the reason you believe that? What sentence from the passage best supports whatever you're asking them to evaluate? And what does that evidence really show? In 7th grade, we're going a little more in depth. At 7th grade, they're not just identifying one topic, they're really going into 2 or more central ideas. And that's where they're starting to evaluate not just one topic, but multiple topics at a time, and being able to summarize without opinions. And that's something new, because at 7th grade, your kiddos are going to have lots of opinions. And we've got to let them express it, but not write it. It's okay to say it, but we can't write it down when we're doing academic writing. So help them track multiple ideas. What are the 2 key ideas of the passage? What does it keep coming back to? Which supports the first idea? Which supports the second idea? How do they connect? What are they similar with? That's where we're really going beyond just the question to the real thinking part of it. And at 7th grade, that's what they're expected to do. So when we're teaching summary without opinion, that's another thing. It's an objective summary. So this goes back to fact and opinion. And then by 8th grade, which we'll get to, it includes bias as well. So it's going to be the same type of questions, but just more detailed. The higher grade we go up, the more detailed and specific the questions are. That way, it's not so overwhelming, and you can get an answer about one part versus starting with the most broad question. With writing, we're starting to build stronger arguments. So in 7th grade writing, you start building the argument part of writing, and students are going to learn how to make a clear argument, an piece of evidence to support their argument, explain the evidence, and start addressing the counter argument, like the other person's side of that situation. That's where we just start with the counter arguments in 7th grade. That's a new skill that they don't usually have a lot of experience with, because at this point they're really not arguing as much. They are in everyday life, but with academic reading, they're really not having to argue much. But this is where it really comes into real world skills, like watching the news, having two friends argue, and figuring out what side is right. Granted, we don't want to focus on who's right and who's wrong, but we do want to support that.
Sorry, I'm in the wrong class.
Okay. Here. 8th grade is where we start analyzing and evaluating. Students are thinking about authors' arguments, evaluation and reasoning, comparing conflicting points of view, and noticing what the author is leaving out just as much as what the author is putting in. When we move beyond just a topic, we've got the argument of the author, the bias, the thoughts, text evidence, conflicting points of view. Some of the greatest stories have awesome points of view that conflict between characters, between nature and the character. So all of those things they've been covered, but in 8th grade, we're really helping them evaluate how that's going to play out in real world life. Education's great, but if it doesn't pull back to something practical you can use, probably not the most helpful. In 8th grade, we start developing the deep questions and the deep writing. Building a sustaining argument, explaining why evidence is strong, addressing the multiple points of view, and then the rebuttals and conclusions. Pushing the thinking forward, asking, are you explaining the evidence or repeating it? There's a difference between restating it, rephrasing it, and actually creating it. So for ADHD kiddos, question design matters. Ask one at a time. Give them about 10-second pause time, because that really helps them just take the mental overwhelm off. And use sentence stems. Here are some of the universal sentence stems that help when they don't know how to phrase what they're wanting to say. The author says, blah, 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 which shows, so these are different specific skills that they're working on, and they work across all the grade levels, but it gives them a place to start, so they're not having to come up with everything in their head and then transfer it to paper, because that's very overwhelming for some students, because it's asking a lot. Not only, especially for an ADHD kiddo, their brain is not only working on how to answer the question, what they just read, why it matters, and then they're having to transfer it and explain it, and that can be a lot. So giving them that extra support really helps. What to do when they still say, I don't know? Okay, tell me more about that. Where does the text show that? Where does it prove that? Does it just mention it, or does it really prove the answer? Prove the response? Does it prove that that's what that character's thinking, that author's saying? So, here is, sometimes we get frustrated. We all do. So instead of like, come on, you know this, you got this, and it sounds great, except for a kiddo who's not sure that they do have it, it can be very, very, very stressful, very real. And they're like, okay, now if I say anything, it's gonna be wrong. And if I say the wrong thing, then I'm wrong again. Where's the upside to this? So breaking it down to, let's just find one part. We're not gonna answer everything. What's the one sentence that seems the most important? Partner read. Partner reading is huge because sometimes when you read out loud and you read silently, when they do it together and you alternate, start small, sentence by sentence. That's how I always start with all of my kiddos. Sentence by sentence, you read a sentence, they read a sentence. And then we alternate to paragraphs and then eventually pages. It helps develop that part of their brain, and it helps them see that you don't always sound perfect when you read either. That makes it normal. And that's what we want to do, is normalize reality. It's not your job to know every answer. Just stay curious and keep helping your kiddo along the way. But when you ask chunked questions, smaller groups of questions, it will make your job that much easier. Versus a big question. Same thing with writing. You say, all right, we're gonna write a 5-paragraph essay. For a kid who struggles writing 1 or 2, it doesn't matter if they've planned it, that's stressful. So sentence stems definitely help. You've got a free guide. It goes more in depth for each grade level with specific sentence stems for each type of question to help your kiddos get through it and help you not lose your mind, because sometimes the struggle is real. So, light up literature. I'll say I created light up literature to help with ADHD kiddos, with reading, writing, middle school ELA, so that it can be more supportive and help families with kiddos like me who didn't like to read, ADHD, and the strategies work for everyone, but that's the biggest step, is just scaffolding it down so that they have steps, smaller questions, you still get to the same skill that you're wanting. So that's all I have for the presentation. Yeah. So what real life questions do you have? So we went over all the formal stuff, but what do we all understand what scaffolding is and how to make that easier? Or do we need a little more support with that? No? Okay. Any questions at all? No? Well, y'all have earned extra time. You've got like 12 minutes left. Or whatever you need to do, like go to the bathroom, make sure you eat, hydrate, all of the good things that are very important in life.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I know it was a little dry, but I was like really wanted to make sure that we could all just ask questions to really help the kiddos who were like me.
Thanks so much.
You're
Have a
very
good one.
welcome. Y'all have a great day.
You too.
I hope y'all are enjoying the show.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Don't forget to check out, well, your kids might not be interested in, but that little clay, the lady who does the clay, she is so amazing. She's so super amazing.
Is she up with the curriculum or outside?
No, she's upstairs.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so like if you walk in, go straight. She goes round table,
Okay.
does the clay, super awesome. I'm like so envious.
Well, thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Have a great day.
You too.